everyone. We are back with another episode of Go Teen Writers Live. I am going to be reading the questions this time. So the first one we have is from LHG. She says, how can you hook your readers to get them to want to read your writing? How can you write your book so that your writing stands out to others? Is there a certain technique to it? And we discussed ahead of time that this is a really broad question, a really big question. So we have a lot of resources on the blog that can help with individual techniques. So for this episode, we're just going to kind of talk about maybe some broader advice that addresses this question. So Shannon, why don't we start with you?
I think my first thought when I read this question was just how big it was, like you said. And then my second thought was drawn to the book I'm currently reading by Donald J. Moss, and it's called Writing the Breakout Novel. And I would recommend it, absolutely. I think the whole premise of his novel, or I'm sorry, the whole premise of his book on craft is that the quality of your book is really what's going to take it to the next level. It's not marketing, and it's not what the publisher can do for you. And so while those all play a part, he's spending an entire book telling you to work on your craft and telling you to work on the quality. And he's got lots of like real world examples of authors who have done that, and all of a sudden a novel has broken out. And so my thought on this is absolutely a hook is important. Absolutely coming up with original ideas and how you're going to imagine your story world is important. A unique setting, awesome. But I think probably my answer to the question would be whatever you're working on, do it really well and try to figure out how to deepen your character. Try to figure out how to build that world as completely as you can. And to that end, I would definitely recommend Jill's book, Story World First. I think that what you do is you work on quality. And you keep looking around the world to find ideas. And if you can smash those two things together and do it to the very best of your ability, you're head and shoulders above most people drafting a novel now, because most people are just looking for that quick hook to grab an audience. And you can do better than that because you can focus on quality and you can focus on craft. And that's all within your control. That would be my advice. Oh, one of Steph, Jill, what do you think?
Jill, are you waiting for me?
I can't tell if she's frozen or just paused.
We're both so polite, we don't want to jump in.
Okay, so I'll answer. So the thing that jumped out at me was that this is two different questions, because there's a difference between hooking readers to even open the book or to buy the book, and then they're in there, right? So for me, I was thinking about how with my contemporaries, with my Skylar Hoyt series in particular, it has always been really tough for me to come up with a hook for that series. I struggled with it when I was pitching it. I struggled with it after it was published, when people would stop and ask me what my book was about. I've always struggled with it. Versus The Lost Girl of Astor Street, which has been super easy for me. And that has made a huge difference in sales. Like when I'm at conferences like American Library Association and I'm trying to get librarians interested in ordering my book for their shelves, I have a very quick hook that I can throw out there of, oh, do you like Veronica Mars or Downton Abbey? Because this book is kind of like a mashup of the two of those. Or even I can distill my plot down to an interesting sentence or two. So that is one skill of its own, being able to explain your book in a way that is interesting, but also quick, and gives your potential reader something to hold on to grab hold of. So I think that's a separate issue from what Shannon was talking about, as far as like writing a really amazing book so that you don't disappoint them after giving them a great premise.
Yeah, I agree.
Jill, do you have thoughts to add?
Yeah. What I think about when I thought about when I read this question is what Randy Angermanson always said, is that the whole point of writing is to create a powerful emotional experience that sucks your reader in, and they are invested. They want to know what happens. They care. And so how do you make a reader care about your characters? Why do they care what's going on? And like both Stephanie and Shannon said, it's more than just a good first sentence. It's more than even just a good way of describing your book. It is the whole, it starts in the beginning, and it starts with how you grip your reader, and you grip your reader by making them care about your main character and what they're going through, because you probably all read a book and you're like, I just don't care. I just don't even care about this person, and I don't want to read them anymore. And so how do you make your reader care? And that's making your character relatable to them in some way, shape, or form. And if you're writing fantasy, you might think, well, how can they relate to somebody who's, a wizard or whatever? But you can find a way, or you can make it interesting enough, or make that wizard have a problem that is interesting enough that makes your reader care. And so it's all about learning how to make your character sympathetic and interesting. It's hard to describe how to do that when I don't have a character that I'm, that we're talking about here. But I think if you look at the books you love, you can kind of identify why you like those characters, and then you want to seek to create a character that has similar qualities. Not that you're copying these characters, but that evokes a similar emotion in people who read, even in yourself, that you love your character, that kind of thing.
Jill, when you were talking, I was thinking about your character Martyr from Replication. And I was thinking about how, even though it's not a circumstance that we can relate to necessarily, that from the moment we meet him, he's so endearing. And you feel such a connection to him, even though it's not a fantasy world, I guess. What would we call that?
It's kind of it's sci-fi, but
yeah. So even though it's a different kind of reality than the one that we see in a day-to-day basis, like he's still very relatable, and you're so drawn into that story. But yeah, I think you have to think about why readers read. They read to be entertained, for the emotional experience. So creating that from the first chapter on is important.
Yeah. I was thinking about, as you were talking, how how small groups of people end up passing a book around, and what makes them do that is that they fell in love, they care deeply about the character. And there's this great publishing advice out there that I've heard about, you want to aim small, you want to aim personal, you want to get really into the nitty-gritty details, because that's what we identify with, the details of our life. And if you can do that on such a grand level, people start passing that book around. And that's really what hooks a group of people, is when they've been told, word of mouth is still the big deal. I've been told, this is a fantastic book, you have to read it. And they see the same thing when they pass it on. So yeah, like Steph said, it is two different questions, really, isn't it? And I hadn't thought about that, but it is. It's what grabs them, and then what gets them to love it and pass it on. And I think you kind of have to address those two things almost separately.
And as far as resources go, Shannon, you mentioned a great one, which is Writing the Breakout Novel. Jill, do you have any books or blogs or blog posts or anything like that you recommend to tackle this issue?
Well, I'm thinking of Brandon Collins' character book. I can't think of what it's called.
Oh, is it Getting Into Character?
Maybe Getting Into Character. And I have a bad tendency of buying tons of writing craft books and like reading half of them, because I get what they're saying, and then I'm so excited I throw the book down and I go writing. And that's kind of the point, is that we get through wherever we're stuck, and we move on. But what I remember learning from her book is she talks a lot about being an actor, I think a method actor, but basically what actors do to get into their characters. And so if you're an author and you're thinking about, if I was this person, if I was acting as this person, can I get into the character enough to make this person real? And so that was a really fascinating concept, and she talked a lot about that in the early chapters of the book.
Before you put it down and started writing your new book.
Before I was like, oh, I got it, I'm going to act now. Okay, throw book.
Real life.
I am Martyr. I am going to shake my head. like,
Thank
what
you
is
for
she
not
talking
doing that.
about?
If you do shave your head, we need to get a video of it, please.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. So thank you, girls.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.